Welcome to the very first episode of Gama, the math club of Isaac. Here we make mathematics a little closer to everyone, and I'm your host, Danny. Today we're talking about one of the biggest hurdles for any student thinking about a master's or MBA, the GMAT Focus Edition. It's the key that unlocks the door to top business schools, but it can feel complex and intimidating. Our goal for this session is simple. By the time you finish listening, you will have a clear picture of what GMAT is and exactly how to proceed. And we have the perfect person to help us. I'm thrilled to welcome Damiao. He is a recent graduate of our very own university and is currently studying at London School of Economics and Political Science, one of the top schools in the world. He successfully navigated GMAT, earning a score of 675, which is around 96th percentile. Thank you so much for joining the Gama Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm always thrilled to help in any way I can my fellow colleagues from ISEC.
Thank you. So let's dive right into GMAT. Damiao, for the student who has only heard the name, what is the GMAT Focus Edition?
So the GMAT Focus Edition is a way for business schools to level out every single candidate because you have all these different scoring systems in different universities across the world. And maybe, to speak in a Portuguese scoring system, a 16 in some universities in Portugal might not be a 16 in France, where the scaling system is also from 0 to 20. And so universities that are very international need a way of assessing from 0 to 20 without just looking at their grades from university. So the GMAT Focus Edition is the perfect way to do just that because it evaluates three main areas: verbal reasoning, quantitative reasoning, and data insights, which is more or less looking at graphs and making intuition from data. GMAT is an adaptive test. And what does that mean? It means that if you get a question right, it gets harder. And if you get one wrong, it gets easier. But the scoring also reflects that, right? If you get some easy questions right, you get less points than if you get harder questions right. And what the quantitative reasoning part of the GMAT is trying to see is if you can approach numerical problems quickly, intuitively, and in a smart way. Because, I think at ESEG and most European universities, when you think about math or when you think about something quantitative, you think about these big problems, these formulas, these integrals, derivatives, calculus, whatever. But it's really nothing of the sort. If you have to do anything like that, you're doing it wrong. It's all about learning how to approach a problem in the easiest way. You have to be able to figure out what is the approximation I can use, or can I rearrange via some algebra the expression or the equation so I can more easily get to the solution. It needs to be something quick, and that is really what they're testing. Can you spot the pattern?
I cannot agree more. At first, I thought quantitative reasoning was like a typical math university level exam, but as you said, it is adaptive, and the better you get, the harder the level of question the next question will be. And the problem is that it is 45 minutes for 21 questions, so on average, approximately 2 minutes per question, and you just cannot spend more than 2 or 3 minutes on a question, otherwise you will be cooked. And I think that one of the biggest hurdles of GMAT is how you manage your time. And it's not about formulas, it's not about uh, memorization, it's about how you approach problem solving. The most interesting part of GMAT is, I think, data insights, because it's something unusual. You cannot see it a lot of times, for example, in GRE, another type of exam. How is it for you, Damiao?
Well, the data insights, I actually find it I was extremely comfortable with it. Because, for the charts part, I think it's very, very easy, and I think nobody will have a problem with it. The tricky part is for the data sufficiency questions. I think, especially if you have not much time, you are incentivized to skip steps, think you know the answer, and just answer. That was my main struggle. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, it's this. That's the answer. But you need to think just a little bit longer about it. I don't exactly agree that it's too little per question. Like, I remember in my exams, I used to spend 4 minutes or a bit longer in the questions that I struggled more with. but it's okay because I made up time in the ones I was really comfortable with. So you don't need to stress if you're taking a long time for an individual question. What you need to focus is if you can do them all in the 45 minutes. The problem is, again, if you are just starting out, you might not see the harder questions because only if you get the easy ones right. So I think for the data sufficiency questions, you have two types of questions. One's where it's about arguments, and it's more of a logical reasoning, and then you have it mathematically. So you have two or three equations, and then they ask you, are these two or three equations enough to state the fourth equation? Is just one of them enough? Are both necessary? Do neither of them have anything to do with what is being told said here? And the problem is, I think data insights puts together the verbal reasoning part and the quantitative reasoning part, because you need to approach the problem fast and you need to do some algebra to rearrange expressions and understand how you need to get to a point where you can say if that is sufficient information to state the next equation. But you also need to understand logic, what is being inferred, and everything, and that comes from a verbal reasoning.
Yes, you mentioned it is important to understand arguments, and data insights ask you about this. And it is also part of verbal reasoning, part of GMAT exam, which consists of, if I'm not mistaken, reading comprehension and critical reasoning. And how was it for you as your native Portuguese speaker?
Well, to be quite honest, it was my best section. I was, again, very, very comfortable with it. And I guess that is mainly due to the fact that I, from a very young age, have been used to reading in English. I think a very good tip that I have realized when I was taking the GMAT is that if you read magazines like The Economist or newsletters from the Wall Street Journal or Financial Times, they are exactly the same type of texts that will appear in the GMAT for you. Specifically, the Economists. I think sometimes they even take parts of text from the Economist and put them in the GMAT. And so, since I, from a very young age, was used to reading about them and getting used to the way they wrote and the words they used and reasoning in English, and then I used to speak about the things I was reading with to my friends or to my family, I was very comfortable with it. I think one of the main problems when people have the reading comprehension is that you have this very long text, and again, you fear that it might take you a huge amount of time. You have to read the whole thing. So a lot of people skip, and instead of reading the text first, they see what the question wants, and then they try to see where in the text they can get their information. I actually think that's the wrong approach. But again, the GMAT is a very personal journey because you need to understand what works for you. What worked for me was reading the whole text, even if I took 3 minutes, not even answering a single question, because the next 3 or 4 questions will be about that text. And since I had already read it, I knew exactly what was in it and I knew how to answer all of them. And I ended up answering the next 4 questions in about a minute or so. So I would average less than a minute per question or something like this.
That's amazing. So let's talk about the review section because I think it's quite interesting part of the exam. It allows you to save as much questions you want for the end to review. And in the end, I think you can edit up to 3 questions if you like to. And for example, if you have time left, you can go back to questions you saved and review and change the answer. Did you use that?
I did not. I had time, but it was not that much time. And honestly, I was pretty okay with my answers. So I just, since I had time, I went through the questions again, quickly just reading, okay, yes, I remember this, I did this, all right. The usual reviewing part, you do it the same in high school, university, whatever, exams. But I would say it's very tempting to, bookmark the question and say, oh, I come back to it because we're used to doing this for our normal exams. But I think you shouldn't, because the thing is you have to answer, right? You can't skip. So if you are answering and you're thinking, oh, I can just come back to this, then you'll most likely get it wrong and you've already lowered the difficulty of the questions that will appear next to you. And even if you go back and change it to the right one, all of the other ones have been already influenced by it. It's not the end of the world, okay? Because if you get one wrong and then get all the others right, you can have you can still have a pretty good score. But if you miss one or two, then you will not be able to get 100%, even if you come back and get those right and get all the other ones right? So you need to think about this. And what I say, honestly, is if you look at a question and think it will take a long time or you don't know how to approach it, after 1.5 minutes, if you can't, skip it. Answer something and go on. Because if you spend too much time on that, or if you start stressing about it, you will just have a worse time on the rest of the exam.
Yes. For example, I saw that some people have like one questions incorrect in their quantitative reasoning, and their score is like 17th percentile of quantitative reasoning, and it tells how adaptive this all is. And usually, even if you bookmark your questions and come back later after you finish all 21 questions, you usually don't have time to go back to all bookmarks. And I cannot agree more with you about this.
Let me just say this because I think it's important. GMAT penalizes you more for leaving questions blank than for getting them wrong. So it's really important that you get to the end. It's worse that you don't get to the end than if you answer them wrong. And also, it's important that you realize that, yes, it is adaptive, but it's not adaptive in a linear way because you have 4 or 5 sections within each of the 3 sections. And if you get a question wrong or right, it is adaptive in that section within that section. So let's say I'm doing algebra in quantitative reasoning. If I get algebra question wrong, then the next algebra question will be easier, but the other ones not necessarily. Okay, so you're not screwing your whole exam for getting one wrong. And if you are very strong in all of the sections but one, you'll still maybe have a high score. It depends on, because again, this is a percentile score, so it depends on how you compare with others. If you are very good at algebra, but everyone is very good at algebra, then if you get an algebra question wrong, it will penalize you more than if you get something wrong that most people also get wrong. So let's say probability or whatever other section. So I think it's important to know where are your strong points and what are the other people's strong points, so you can develop an expectation about what your score might be and where you should focus more on. I think algebra is very intuitive. Even the hardest algebra questions are very intuitive for a person that's already in university doing advanced calculus, because that is really just maybe not even, some of them are not even high school level maths, are 8th, 9th grade level maths for the algebra parts.
I myself will take a test next week, and in quantitative reasoning, the hardest part I think is the word questions, like convoluted, big wall of text, which you have to understand, swallow the pill, translate into equations, get the right approach, and move on next time. And as you said, it also tests probabilities, combinations, statistics. Usually people struggle with that, but since I took like statistics 1 or 2, it was pretty easy for me in quantitative reasoning. Yes.
Yes, the combinatorics part is covered in, I mean, it was, at least when I did it, the 12th year of mathematics in Portugal. You have all you need to succeed in the probabilities combinatorics part of GMAT. Don't think you're going to be doing university level probability questions, because again, if you're doing anything related to advanced calculus, that's the wrong approach. You're going to take too long, and it's probably won't even get to the right answer. So I would say the quant part was my weakest part. And this is also a bit due to my preparation that I did, which was, the problem was, I was just taking over as the president of the Lisbon Investment Society, and it was the summer between my second and third year of college, because I wanted to have GMAT ready when I began my third year, so I could apply because masters were going to open that then, and I was also working, doing my summer internship. So I had to balance all of this, and even on top of that, the Olympics were on, and I always watch the Olympics. It's something I do with my family. I wanted to study, but then I wanted to watch the Olympics, and I honestly I should have worked more on quant. I think my preparation ended up being like a week, maybe not even a week of serious hard work. If I had done more quant questions, I think the quant ones are the ones that you can really, if you, because the thing is, sometimes you have questions that need a certain trick or a certain formula that you don't know. But if you see them, you will know, okay, so I have to apply this formula. And if you do enough questions, you will get in the mind process of understanding. I look at a question, I immediately recognize what they're asking me to do. Like I remember these questions, like, what is the sum of all numbers from 1 to 99? And you're like, bro, where do I even start? And then you understand, okay, but if you do 1 plus 99 plus 2 plus 98 plus 3 plus 97. So if you just rearrange this, you get 49 times 100 or 50 times 100. I don't even remember. But and you immediately begin to spot these kinds of patterns if you do these things enough times. And there's only a finite set of tricks and formulas that they will evaluate you on. So if you spend enough time, you will eventually get it right. I think that's why the quant section is the strongest part on average of all GMAT takers, because it is the one that you can work on the easiest, right? It's just doing some maths problems. Whereas the verbal reasoning and the data insights, it's very about analytical thinking and reasoning and logical thinking. So that takes usually takes more time, and it's harder because it's not something you're used to doing. Usually in our education system, there's a very big incentive for you to just practice questions and get to the exam because the questions will be the same. It's not really about thinking, creating logical arguments, etc. There are some things that are like this, but not all of them. I was lucky enough, again, as I said, to be doing it already, and that's why I was so comfortable with verbal and data insights.
I want to learn more about your preparation, like being president of Lisbon Investment Society, working for internship, and also balancing your personal life. Like it's insane. Can you please tell us like what was your typical day of active preparation?
Well, there was another thing I left out, which I think is important, which was at the time I was meeting who today is my girlfriend, and I was starting to have a relationship with her. So I also had to devote a lot of time to that. So if I tell you my typical day, we need to include her. That's why I'm mentioning this. I guess my typical day would be waking up around 6, and then getting ready for the day and went to work because I was doing asset management, and we had to be in the office quite early to have the morning meeting and prepare the strategy for the day, and you get caught up on the news of the previous day and align our strategy on what we're going to do today. Sometimes I would use the lunch break to do some questions, but I didn't feel like I could seriously concentrate. So what I usually did was go to GMAT Club, read what other people were struggling with, so I could get some perspective from other test takers and align that with my personal struggles. Because as I've said, this is a very personal journey. There is no one size fits all. I can tell you what worked for me, but what you should actually be doing is hearing from the biggest amount of people that have taken the GMAT what worked for them, because somewhere in that mix will be what works for you. And that's what I did. I was, reading about what people were having trouble with, what their techniques were. I saw a lot of GMAT Ninja YouTube videos because he explains it step to step and really quite well the approach that you need to take. And that was my preparation outside of actually doing exercises. Then when I got out of work, which actually used to be quite soon because European markets close at 4:30, so 5, I was most of the days I was done, and then I usually had something going on with my girlfriend, until night, and then during the night I would do some exercises. I only defined this as my goal because, goal is my daily goal, because the first thing I did when I decided to take the GMAT was take a mock. They're free when you sign up. You get 2 mocks. So the first thing I did was take a mock and understand what is my strong areas, what are my weak areas, and what do I need to work on. And I immediately saw that quant was where I needed to work, and verbal and data insights I was quite comfortable with. So I just started doing a bunch of quant questions, and I think the official GMAT manual is perfect for that, because you have the official GMAT manual for quant, and it just has a big amount of questions, but more importantly, it has the answers, it has the reasoning behind the answers, and you have the easy, the medium, and the hard questions, and they are exactly the same as what will come out on your exam. So I would say do 1 mock to see where you struggle, then study a lot until you are comfortable where you used to struggle, and only then do the mocks again. Because the mocks, you have a limited time. If you buy the extra mocks, you have a number of times that you can do it. I don't know if it's still 2, but when I bought them, it was 2. And you don't want to spend them just like that. So you can do them if you don't know anything, because only the easy questions will appear, and you get accustomed to the test format and how it works, and you evaluate yourself. You have a bunch of statistics to know where you can be better and you can improve. You're going to be more prepared. You're going to reach the harder questions, and you're going to see new questions. So you're not taking the exact same exam again, because again, it's adaptive. So I would suggest, if people are trying to, figure out what's the approach, for me, it was do a mock, see where you struggle, work a long time, or however long it takes you to on that part specifically, until you're very comfortable with whatever questions might arise, and then take mocks again, because otherwise you're going to just end up exhausting all your mocks before the exam.
Yes, as I said, GMAT is a very personal journey, and I myself sit a lot on Reddit, on GMAT subreddit, and I read a lot of personal stories how they handled GMAT, and it resonates a lot with your personal path. You mentioned that we should all start, and I cannot agree more, with 1 mock exam. And yes, it is up to this day is up to 2 times you can redo it. Actually, mock 1 and 2 you can redo anytime you want, but the questions will reappear 3rd time and 4th time. Yes, and you mentioned very good, I think, to summarize it, like GMAT Ninja is a YouTube channel and a very cool guy who explains very well all topics on GMAT. GMAT Club, like it's biggest forum for GMAT preparation. There are a lot of people who bought also official guides. Have you bought them?
Well, I actually was fortunate enough to have a person that had just done the GMAT before me, the year before, and he actually was done. So he lent me the books. And I can honestly say it is the best prep material you can get. So try and see if you can get them from someone, because they're quite expensive, but I 100% think they're worth it. There is no better place to go than the official guides, because you have an official guide for all sections, and then you have one for each specific session. So again, if you were like me and you were having trouble with quant, you can just buy the quant one. It's not that expensive. It has a lot of questions, but more importantly, it has the reasoning. And once you get the reasoning, you don't need to get the questions from there. You can get the questions from anywhere, because you already know how they're done. So for instance, you mentioned GMAT Club. There you can find people that will have a huge amount of questions from that they've collected in a PDF file from all the previous GMAT guides and current GMAT exams and whatever, and you have the very hard ones, the hard, and etc. And you can get access to the questions. What really matters is getting access to how they want you to answer, what's the optimal path, what's the reasoning, what are the formulas, what are the tactics, and this, I think, is the GMAT official guides are the best way to go if you want that. And then I also think it's worth it to buy mocks, at least 1 or 2, because I really think the last week before you take the exam, you should only be doing mocks, because you should, by now, you should be preparing yourself for the exam taking process and not studying. If you want to study, you do just the questions. Now you want to do the whole exam because the whole exam is quite tiring. It's about 3 hour exam. It depends on if you take a break or not. And it's hard. It's very easy to get demoralized if you get a section wrong, but you need to be able to do it through and through. So, in the last week, you should be practicing your mocks. And for that to be possible, you need to have them available. If you've already done them, you've already seen the questions, you're not simulating an actual exam setting. You can do the first two, they're free. And if you do them in the beginning of your GMAT journey, as I've said, you only see the easy questions because you'll get most wrong. Then you can take them again and you'll see harder questions or medium level questions depending on your progress. And honestly, if you've done like other two mocks or if you've done a lot of questions again, then you can come back to them because you might not even remember the first questions depending on how much time it took.
Okay, thank you so much, Jamil. And to wrap it all up, can you please tell us about how was your test day? Were you nervous? How was it?
Well, I actually have to praise the place where I took the exam because it was very nice. It was a very nice place for anyone wondering, should I take it at home? Should I do it in person? 100% do it in person. The team is incredibly nice. It's in the middle of Lisbon. It's very accessible, and you have the perfect setting. They have coffee, water, bathroom, fruit for you, just if you want it. It's very quiet. They're very helpful. Perfect exam experience. Whereas I've heard people do it at home and they have a bunch of technical problems and that really throws you off. So just do it in presence and it will be much better. For me, I had it in the morning. I think it was 8 or 9 a.m. or something like this. And yeah, I was a bit nervous, but I had been doing my mocks. I knew that I was, consistently getting 675, 655, 695. I got 1705 one time, but I was like, if I can get this, that's perfect. But if I get a lower score, as long as it's above 655, I was happy because it was like, I think it was 93% or something. So that was more or less what I was aiming for. But I'm an advocate of saying that 50% of the score is your confidence. I know people that were more prepared than me. They were very stressed and they didn't score that well. I know some people that didn't weren't as prepared, but they were very confident, so they could calm themselves and have a better score. I think you need to trust yourself. You need to trust the process, and you need to think, "Hey, man, if this doesn't work out, it's not the end of the world. I can do another one." And there are places, very, very good places where I don't even need a GMAT, so it's cool. Take the pressure off so you can actually focus and do your best. I actually didn't take a break. I didn't.
Uh-huh.
I did quantitative, verbal, and data because again, quantitative was the one I had the most problem with. And as soon as I got that done, I was like, I either take a break now or I don't. And I'm like, let me just go on with this. Like I'm focused. I'll do it. And yeah, I just went through verbal and went through data, and it was pretty well. And I remember ending it, and I was like, and then the screen showing up on your score because it's immediate. You immediately know the score
Yes.
you're gonna have, and I was pretty glad. I remember thinking I could have studied more for the quant. It was my worst section. Like if my just for you to know, I had a I had a below average quant score because I got the first two questions wrong and it was the easiest question,
Yeah.
so that really screwed my score because I don't know, like I was distracted or something. I had questions like x minus 5 equals 55. Oh, of course x equals
Yes.
50. Of course not. But
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
made mistakes. I made two mistakes like those of not paying enough attention, and I had a 47th percentile quant score, but I have 99 percentile score on the other two. So, if I had just gotten a little bit better, I would have very good score because usually people have like 80% on all, or they're, if you get very, very high on one, you already will be very high score overall because it's again about how you compare to others. So if you have a 90th something percentile on one score or on two scores, like me, you can have a lower score on the other because overall there's not many people that can get a higher score. So I was happy, and mostly I was happy that it was done. Like I could bury
Yes.
this thing and get on with my life. Uh, yeah.
That's actually so impressive. Like, I have no words. I cannot thank you enough for coming here today. Your story was so impressive and amazing. I'm so happy for you that you right now in London School of Economics. That's so amazing. I'm so happy for you. And thank you for sharing with us your advice and your preparation, because the hardest part, in my opinion, for me, it was to get started. And to wrap it up for everyone who doesn't know how to start, is get mock exam. There are two free mock exams. Know your baseline, where you at. Focus on your weak areas and focus on them in GMAT Club by practicing this specific topic, by official guides, and there's a lot of research online for this all. And be confident, everything's gonna be alright. Damiao, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me. Again, always available to help anyone that wants to try the GMAT. I know it's very hard to get access to information, and so I can help in any way I can. Just let me know. And good luck
Thank
to
you.
everyone taking
Appreciate
it.
it.